Could you hear me? Just so, oh, I'm sure I'm muted for right now. Is there too much sunlight?
The opinions expressed on this program are those of the speaker or guest and do not necessarily reflect those of the management or staff of Radio Kingston, WKNY, AM 1490, FM 1079, Kingston, New York.
Welcome to the Cosmic Dispatch, a show about bodies, celestial and earthbound, time, experience, and the relationship between all of them. I'm your host, Cory Nakasue, and welcome, friends. How's it going on this April 16th, 2023? Have we filed our taxes yet? I have. So I don't have to worry about that. You have a couple more days. I do believe that the deadline is the 18th this year. And I have to say, my spring is just getting better and better. Aside from the summer weather that we had last week, it might have been a little too hot, but I'll take it. I like the sun. Um, I just got back from teaching at a retreat up here in Windham, New York, at Windham Manor, and it was just glorious. I taught a couple of astrology workshops for Updog, New York. And I just got to say that Tommy Birch and her team really put together a nice retreat. Great food, beautiful location, movement classes, spa treatments, time to relax. I even got to meet a couple of our listeners, which was really cool. I hope they invite me back. Hint, hint, if you're listening, which I think some of you are today. Um, we have a great show for you today. This is a potent week of astrology. We have a very edgy solar eclipse on the horizon. Yes, we are officially in eclipse season. We also have the sun's ingress into Taurus. Yay, Taurus season. Um, and what else? Yeah. Oh, and Mercury's station retrograde in Taurus as well. Typically, when there's a new moon, I will do a new moon music show and a breakdown of the archetypes of the new season. But we're getting a second new moon in Aries right before Taurus season, which is going to force me to mix things up a little bit. And I suspect it might mix you up a little bit too, which I think is a good thing. It's a blip in the sequence, which is what an eclipse is, especially this one. It forces our creativity and keeps things interesting. So join me next week for a little bit of Taurus inspired music and an audience questions show. If you would like a question answered on the air next week, email us at thecosmicdispatch@gmail.com. We have a little bit of a backlog of questions, but Mandy tries to pick questions that have some correlation to the current astrology and about astrology in general. So there's a chance you'll get your question answered next week if you write in this week. And you can also stay up to date with all of the Cosmic Dispatch content on our Instagram. You can also sign up for our monthly newsletter, which includes monthly horoscopes, moon reports, bonus content, and information about workshops and consultation schedules. You can also find our content on YouTube. We're still setting that up, but there are a handful of videos up already if YouTube is your preferred platform. So, housekeeping all done, I have a special guest with me today to help me parse out the very potent astrology of the week and also help us get a beat on Taurus season. My guest is Joseph Addeo, astrologer, opera singer, and a Taurus sun to boot, and also one of my former teachers, which makes this even more fun and special. And here you are. Hi, Joe. Nice to see you.
Hi, Cory. It's great to see you. Can you hear me okay? I didn't even do a soundbite yet.
No, you sound good.
Good. No, it's so nice to be here. Thank you. So happy to be doing the show.
Oh, you're very welcome. So could you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and your work?
Sure. I've been out doing astrology for about 25 years. I was trained originally in the contemporary modern way, but over the last 10 years, I've been studying a lot of Hellenistic astrology, and I love the ancient techniques here, and I've incorporated a lot of them with the more psychological modern techniques. I wouldn't classify myself in any specific way, because like most astrologers, I take what works for me and I make my own little technique based on all that stuff. But the Hellenistic astrology I just love, so that's really changed the course of what I've been doing. I don't sing opera anymore, but that's what I did for 20 years before being an astrologer. So a very Taurus thing to do because of the voice. And never really worked the corporate world because I couldn't. So I always did something very creative. But I do my readings, my lectures, my writings.
Right. And no, I totally relate to all of that. When I first started studying astrology, it was all the modern works, a lot of psychological astrology, like from the Liz Green school, and then similar to you, but for me, over the past 5 or 6 years, I started getting into the ancient techniques and the
I
Hellenic.
love them. I
I
love
love
them.
it. It's really, I feel like it's really cleaned up, especially in a technical way, cleaned
I
up
agree.
astrology.
It's cleaned up a lot technically, and it's changed my use of house systems. I know there's so many arguments about what house system to use. I know when you studied with me, I was very much tied into Placidus, but I don't even use Placidus anymore. I use equal signs. I just without I could talk about that for hours, but it works much much better for me, and I get cleaner readings, I get better readings, I get more concise readings. Uh, and this is what astrology is about. You have to do what works for you. It's like, there's so many different schools. It's like psychology. You could be a Jungian, you could be a Freudian, you could be an Adlerian, and astrology is the same thing. You don't have to do something strictly by one way of doing it all the time.
Absolutely. And that's where, the personal art form of interpretation comes in.
Exactly. The
Um,
creative side, yes.
yeah. And so, and you could just keep playing with that and changing it up for as long
Exactly.
as you practice.
You stamp, there are certain basics, like like in Gemini, there's always the ABCs. There's certain basics that run through. You have to know your basics. But once you learn your basics, you can play around a little bit. And then it's always good to come back to the basics. That's why teaching is always good. Teaching always brings you right back.
Yeah. Yeah. I find like when I teach, like I end up like learning so much and remembering so much that I forgot.
I
It's
know. I have to go back to
valuable.
teaching, and I've had a hard time navigating this Zoom world, but I have to go back to teaching.
And you're a good teacher. Um,
Thank you. Thank
and
you.
you do a lot of work with the NCGR, or do you still?
I don't do as much work with NCGR. I was on their board for 18 years for the New York chapter of NCGR. I was very much tied into them for 18 years on their board. I've broken away a little. I mean, I'm still in touch with all those people, but the NCGR is where I got my start and where I got my training. It's a wonderful astrological organization with many chapters throughout the U.S. They sponsor students, they offer classes, they publish journals and newsletters, they offer scholarships to people in need, and they're there to protect astrologers too when they get into trouble. I owe my career to them, and John Marcusello was my teacher there, And he brought me into the fold, and it got me started in astrology, meeting all the people. So I owe a huge debt of gratitude to NCGR, and I'm still a member. Obviously, I will be a member for life of them. But it's important to keep connected to the community. There's ESAR, NCGR, there are a bunch of them. But NCR was where I got my start.
Yeah, well,
NCGR, did I say that right? NCG, the
NC
National Council for Geocosmic Research.
Well, that's how I found you. I was living in New York City at the time, and I had been into astrology for a very long time. I lapsed, and then about 10 years ago, um, it astrology was getting very popular and more people were asking me for readings, and I'm like, wait, hold on, I'm doing way too many readings to not get paid. Let me go brush up on my skills. And all I had to do was like, I didn't have to look too far to find NCGR and all
Yeah.
these classes, all these teachers, and it was a great
Great
resource.
entryway, and to get your mind exploding and your creative juices going. It really is. It's wonderful to have these organizations, because it keeps you, you can't just be an astrologer after 2 weeks of reading about, it keeps you in the groove, and you're realizing that it's a constant education and a constant synthesis of a lot of information. So it's not as simplistic. And the internet obviously has, astrology is booming, but you have to navigate it a little bit, because everybody thinks they can do it, and it's not necessarily true. Well, it's really not true.
It's definitely not true. And I think I read in your bio that are you doing some work with Kepler College?
I did. I was on their board for about a year. But my mother got ill recently, very ill. So I've had to back off of Kepler College board, take care of her a little bit. But I was working with them, so I'm hopefully we'll get back into with them when things come down in my personal life. But Kepler is another wonderful, wonderful school, and they offer all online courses. It's all online. So when I was on the board, I didn't even meet the people. They were all over the country. And that's it's wonderful Zoom, but I'm such a Taurus. I like tactile. I like to see people in person. I think Zoom and all this is phenomenal. I love it, like for this. And I love my client consultations on Zoom one-on-one. I find that works well because I can read their energy and some of it just drives me crazy in group situations, because I can't see the students. I don't know who's talking. I don't know if they're getting me. I don't know if they're drinking soda or picking their nose.
Right. Yeah. No, same. I totally relate. It's like so convenient and wonderful for certain things, but looking
But you
at
have,
the
yeah.
tiny boxes, and I
You
just
have to do it, though. It's progress. Pluto and Aquarius. I don't want to be an old fogey guy saying I don't want to do. You have to adapt to progress. To the extent that you can and want to, but you can't just say no.
or I mean, you can, but then you'll be left
But then
behind.
you'll be left out a little bit.
Yeah. So I was talking about this big potent week of astrology that we have
Yeah.
ahead of us. Um, April 20th and the 21st look like two really hot days,
Right.
beginning with the solar eclipse in Aries on the
So,
20th. And I was wondering if you've been looking at that and what seems to be interesting.
yeah. I mean, you made it in your introduction. You said something very interesting. We had a 0 degrees Aries new moon, and now we're having a 29 degrees Aries eclipse. I think of that first Aries. The 0 degrees of a sign is always about beginnings, and 29 degrees of a sign is a lot about endings. A solar eclipse is always about planting seeds for new beginnings. But it's interesting because the 29 degrees Aries is like endings, and Aries is a sign of beginnings. There's a lot of mixed messages. So really, if I was going to break down the language there, it's a time to end things and begin things. And some of the new beginnings are going to be based upon things that are ending. And what's really interesting about the 0 degrees new moon, it happened at the end of the Mars retrograde. Mars was in Gemini since August. It went retrograde October 25th. It turned direct January 12th. And then it came out of its shadow on March 15th. And then we had the Aries new moon. So it's like Mars was rehabilitated on that 0 degrees there. Mars was like a car going into a shop to get an overhaul during the retrograde. Our warrior energy, our action energy, our anger energy, our courage, bravery, all the things that Mars represents, sexual energy, goes in for a makeover or do-over, and it comes out of its shadow on March 15th. And then we get that Aries new moon. So it's like Mars saying, here I am, I'm back. My mojo's here. I'm ready to get started. And now we have the Aries solar eclipse, which is always rather fated times. 29 degrees is extreme, right? Anoretic degrees.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what are you ending in your life, and what are you beginning? That's how I look at a lot of this. Um, um, it's a very, very it's just and it's also entering, all the eclipses are now for the 19 months going to be in the Aries Libra polarity. So it's the first eclipse we're having in Aries, and and it has an extreme type of energy, and it's coming along with a Mercury retrograde the next day in Taurus, um, and it has it's births and new beginnings, but also deaths and endings. And Pluto's in Aquarius, just went into Aquarius. Saturn just went into Pisces. And this is the first eclipse we're having after those ingresses of those two planets. And obviously, Pluto's going to be aspecting this eclipse very, very, very strongly.
Yeah. I want to know what you think about that Pluto square to the eclipse.
I think it's a Pluto. The planet is traveling over this Aries, 0 degrees Aries point, up 0 degrees Aquarius and 29 degrees Capricorn. So it's hitting that Aries eclipse a lot. And it's a gateway into the destruction of the old and making way for the new. Winding up its time in Capricorn, the old institutions, the old stereotypes, the old patriarchy, the old things that have stood the test of time, what it will stand the test of time and what won't stand the test of time. You're going to see the polarities. We see it all. I mean, it's been in the government for ages, right? The polarities of the people, right? The things that are rotting and decaying in society and in your personal life are up for review, to purge, to transform, and let go and make way for a new beginning, because Aquarius is the sign of progress, the future, equality. We'll have a lot of political revolutions, right? Aquarius rules democracy, socialism, communism, autocratism. It rules all forms of politics. So we'll see that. I don't predict Aries is a war sign, but I'm not saying there's going to be a war breaking out right now. But we already have a war in Ukraine. Things, are exacerbating here with this, and there's going to be an extreme way of thinking.
Yeah.
With Pluto going into Aquarius, Pluto triggers this eclipse. Pluto triggered this eclipse degree back on March 15th. It hit 29 degrees of Capricorn. Planets will trigger. So you want to see maybe what happened in the middle of March, because it can precede, not predict. Well, yes, predict what the eclipse might be about. And then there are going to be other triggers, right? It's like the foreshadowing or the pre-shadowing. Thank you. And Pluto will hit that degree again on June 21st. So, and I've been saying to everybody, watch what happens with Pluto in the beginning degrees of Aquarius along with this eclipse, because it's only staying in Aquarius till June 12th. And then it's going to retrograde back into Capricorn. This is like an appetizer course. And the Aries eclipse is saying, here's your appetizer course. You're going to get the vision. Aries is a very visionary sign about what these next few months are going to be. The eclipse months are always very faded. Everybody feels very hyper. If good things are going on or bad things are going on, everybody feels overwhelmed. But nothing is extreme as it really seems on the eclipse, because it's like drinking 10 million cups of coffee. I think you've heard me say that a million times. But the vision of Aries, and then because Pluto's going to then retrograde back into Capricorn, and it's going to trigger that degree again, and it's got to tie up some old stuff with the old guard, and what's staying and what's going, or what. And then when it goes back into Aquarius at the end of January 2024, it's the entree of what the appetizer was at this time of life. So that's how I like to look at all this. It's like, and Pluto is like a plumber taking the sludge out of the toilet. Things have gotten too clogged in society, are things, the Capricorn architecture and institutions and standard and way of are just clogged, and they have to be, the muck and the mire has to come out of all that stuff. It's, I don't want to talk too much about politics, but Donald Trump is interesting just from a perspective of, he was indicted around March 15th when Pluto hit this degree. And they say he probably won't go to trial until January when Pluto goes. So it's very, very important just to look at the politics and what's going on in the world, because you get a very, very strong representation of these energies that we're talking about.
And eclipses in general, I know, like we were talking about, some people who think they know a little bit of astrology, and we
Mm.
get into eclipse season, and they're making, they're seeding their intentions, and they're trying to make things happen. And I always recommend not to do that. I don't think eclipse season is an intention setting time. I think you need to just get out of its way and pay
That's I
attention.
agree. You don't know quite what it's going to be about. Sometimes you do, but not always. And it can be get out of the way, and yes, and expect the unexpected sometimes with eclipses.
Yeah, just pay attention to what's going on around you,
Mhm.
because your environment's going to be ripe with a lot of information, symbology,
And to
messaging.
stay in the present moment, yes.
Yeah.
It's like when many women who love astrology, when they're having babies, they want to have a cesarean and want that baby to be born at a certain time because it's going to look good. And this is like eclipses. Like I want to do a meditation on this. Well, the universe has a very funny way of saying, you want the baby born at that time? You think this eclipse is going to be that? The predictive part of astrology is that the eclipses will shake something up, and you make educated guesses based on your homework and looking at the chart. But you really have to stay. It's a very Uranian time eclipses, so you have to go with the roller coaster ride a bit and adapt a little bit, a lot.
Yeah, you hear that, everybody? Just chill out and just pay attention. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about Taurus season.
Great.
Hi, I'm Rory Kane, captain of the sloop Clearwater, an educational sailboat on the Hudson River. We take school groups out on the water for hands-on learning and experiential education, and we depend on our volunteers to help with sloop operations. Every week from April to October, 4 volunteers come and live on board with us and help facilitate our sailing classroom program and contribute to our onboard community. If you volunteer with us, you'll get to participate as an onboard educator telling people about the sloop, and you'll also get to participate as a crew member. You'll live aboard the sloop for an unforgettable week of sailing and teaching. If you're interested in becoming a volunteer, you can find out more at clearwater.org.
Hi, I'm Susan.
I'm Alen.
And I'm Micah.
Join us Tuesday nights at 7 for the Good Work Hour.
We're talking to people who are living their day-to-day lives, but also building a better future.
You may even call it good work.
What inspires us, what's emerging in our hearts and minds.
When I was a little kid, I was just like, I don't ever want to go to heaven because I like problems to solve.
Scrappy folks coming out of our own businesses. Like me, I came out of a co-op farm, and we are trying to create a collective fund for ourselves, for us and by us.
How that work is impacting our communities, our place, our time now, and the future.
My whole career has been in community mental health, and everywhere I looked, there was just trauma everywhere.
I love when things actually end with a plan.
The Good Work Hour, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. here on Radio Kingston.
AM 1490.
FM 1079.
And anytime at radiokingston.org.
Support for the Radio Kingston Community Fund is provided by MJ Cullum, a licensed real estate salesperson with Country House Realty based in Kingston. MJ works with home buyers and sellers in the Mid-Hudson Valley and Catskills. MJ guides clients through today's unpredictable market with data-driven advice and real talk. Learn more on Instagram at HVCatskillsAgent or online at hvcatskills.com. You're listening to The Cosmic Dispatch. I'm your host, Cory Nakasue, and with me today is astrologer Joseph Addeo. And we were just talking about the big eclipse that happens on the 20th, but that's not the only thing happening on the 20th. So really circle, I was going to say circle, the 20th, just the whole week. Just circle the whole week.
And circle that whole week.
Yeah, it's going to be intense. And right after the eclipse, the sun moves into Taurus. And we're in Taurus season. And so what say you, Joseph, about Taurus season?
Taurus season. Tra-la, it's May, the lust misty month of May, that lovely month when everyone goes blissfully astray. Tra-la, it's here, that shocking time of year when tons of little wicked thoughts merrily appear. May is Earth. May is fertility. Taurus is fertility. It's the heat of the sun warming the earth. And it makes your body feel the heat and come alive. And you experience your senses and you experience luxury. You want to luxuriate in Mother Nature. You want to luxuriate in your body. You want to get in touch with your talent. You know, when it's the intense time of spring and everything's budding and the flowers are blooming and there's a lot of color. So it's it's like the Empress card in the tarot deck. It's a woman pregnant with possibilities, a man pregnant with possibilities. What are my creations? What can I create here? What's my talent? What's my potential? What lies deep inside me that I can warm with the rays of the suns and share with everybody? It's Mother Earth. It's the flowers. It's the seeds that have been lying dead in the wintertime that are now warmed by the rays of the sun. You know, in many traditions, the rays of the sun are masculine yang energy, and the seed in Mother Earth is a yin and a feminine energy, and it's the two coming together. And as the rays of the sun warm the earth, and so everybody wants to bask in the sun. It's your talent. It's money. It's money because money is about self-worth and value. And Taurus is what we value. It's the talent we have deep inside of us that we potentially can use in the material world to make money and provide us with material security. Taurus cares very much about the earth and being grounded and having security. It's the 7 deadly sins because it wants to indulge in lust, greed, envy, sloth, gluttony, wrath, and pride. A little bit of those can be fun. A lot of those can make for a very horrible type of person, right? You want to get out into nature when the Taurus time of year comes. You want to, it's a springtime and people get I would love to see how many babies are born 9 months after Taurus, because everybody's sensuality is being, and sexual, it's more of a sensual sign, but sensual sign leads to a lot of sexual behavior, right? It's interesting. And Jupiter's going to go right into Taurus too. We have Mercury retrograding in Taurus. So we're getting lambasted in this Taurus season. It's going to be highly, highly emphasized.
Yeah.
I want to have you see where you bounce things off of you here.
Well, as you were speaking, I kept thinking about the painting "The Garden of Earthly Delights" by Hieronymus Bosch.
Yes.
Like that's what kept coming up. And I'm sitting here like smiling as you're speaking about Taurus, and I don't think I've ever told you this. I've had a few consultations with you, and one of the things I love most about the way you deliver the astrology is it's embodied. And like when you talk about it and when you look at the chart, it like courses through your body
Right.
and your voice, and there's such investment and emotion, and it's kind of operatic.
It is, yes, and I was, Taurus in medical astrology rules the voice, so I'm very, very conscious of how I use my voice to persuade people, the sensuality of my voice, the sound of the voice, the beauty of the voice. I was very, very lucky. I was blessed with a very beautiful voice from birth. That was just luck with being the Taurus, and then I cultivated it. Taurus can be very, very lazy on its downside and it needs to be pushed. It's the sign of potential, but that potential needs to be pushed and shaken up a little bit. But in medical astrology, it rules the throat because Aries is the face, and medical astrology just goes down from the body. So the throat is what's inside. So your voice is what comes out of you. It expresses what's in you. So the voice is very, very a powerful tool for Taurus.
I have a lot of Taurus friends who they've developed all kinds of interesting things going on with their thyroid. And that's, located in the throat, and the
Mhm.
thyroid regulates things.
Yes.
And so that makes me also think of Taurus as, trying to create a sense of control over
Oh,
fluctuations. And
it's a very
so,
fixed time.
yeah, and so thinking about, the throat and the body, and you have a Taurus sun. I don't know if you have any other Taurus
No,
placement.
it's interesting. I have a very scattered chart. My planets are very spread out. Taurus, the sun is the only planet in Taurus. So you want to look at where Venus is, and my Venus is in Cancer, which just backs up the Taurus stuff. I'm always
That's
at home.
complementary.
I never leave my house.
Um,
Um,
but like, how, so you've already said so much about Taurus, like in general, but like personally, like in your
well, if
own
I
body, how do
Yeah. Well, personally, if I'm it's a good little astrology lesson here for your listeners who really study astrology. My Taurus sun happens to be in the seventh house. So I get a lot of value from being around other people. So I get a lot of value being an astrologer when I have my one-on-one consultations with people because my sun shines in the seventh house. And the sun is difficult shining in the seventh house because you need somebody else to balance it off. So people like me for the things of value and substance that I say to them in those consultations. So that's how it comes across for me. As an opera singer, of course, it was very, very strong of using my voice and showing off the beauty. I'm very into my body. I love going to the gym. I'm a little narcissistic in terms of showing off my musculature, and all that stuff. I'm very sensual. I think during the pandemic, it's been a little tricky because everybody's been so untactile. And I think now going back into Taurus season with Mercury going into Taurus and Jupiter going into Taurus, and the social distancing might, back off a little bit as people, can start to touch again. And, touch is a tricky thing. It's physical. Um, you know, the lessons I've always had to learn with Taurus is money. Everybody who's a Taurus sun has an issue with money in some way or another. I have a very funny story. I was with my ex-boyfriend the other day, and he was asking me about and Taurus is very stubborn and fixed in this materialism. And he was saying, I need to go to the ATM. Do you know what the ATM charges are? I go, and this is true. I go, I have never been to an ATM in my entire life other than at the bank because I refuse to go to an ATM and pay any fees. I have never used an ATM in a deli. I go to the bank because I'm very obsessed with how paying any fees with that money. And that's a very, very Taurus thing. And the stubbornness and the routine of just in 55 years that ATMs have been around, or however long, I've never used one outside of a bank.
Okay, that's a great example. And so when you were singing during your 20 years as an opera singer, what was training like for you, or did you train?
Oh, yeah, no, I had to train a lot. I had a naturally beautiful voice, but I wanted to sing opera, and I was pushed to sing opera because my voice had a certain sound to it that everybody said would be good in opera. So I had to train a lot. I had to train a lot. Teaching Taurus is good there for the routine of taking lessons practicing every day, doing the routine, cultivating the beauty. Taurus is a beauty sign along with Libra. So the Taurus beauty is raw. So you have this, Libra beauty is aesthetic. Taurus beauty is raw. It's like the flowers. It's like your voice in its natural state. The flowers, you cut the flowers and then you bring them inside and you arrange them. That's Libra beauty, aesthetic beauty. So here I have the raw natural talent, but the Taurus energy needs to be, I need to practice to develop it, to make it something that's more than just potential. Taurus is that bull lying in the pasture, and the bull needs to be pushed in order, the bull likes to just sit there. And so you could have great beauty, you could have great talent, but if nobody knows about it because you're too lazy to get out there and do it, so that's how it worked out in my life. And, you always have to look at the aspects that sun makes. But I get my joy through expressing things through my voice. It grounds me. It makes me feel centered. I'm very conscious of the tone of my voice when I speak to clients. I'm conscious if I want to be animated or if I want to deepen it, if I want to seduce people with my voice. It's very, but the Taurus, money is always preoccupation with Taurus. I can't money, whether they have a lot or none.
It's the security issue.
The
It's the
security, the
control issue.
material security,
Comfort, knowing that you
comfort.
have like a cushion, that
My
stash.
first astrologer said, "Oh my God, you have a Taurus sun with Venus in Cancer. You must have a hose connected from your mouth to the kitchen." Because those two signs are like want to eat and cook. I love to cook. I love to eat. I'm very indulgent. I have very large. Taurus generally has very large appetites. They talk about Scorpio being a very sexual sign. Taurus, even more so. Taurus, because Taurus doesn't necessarily want the emotional connection often. Without getting too into detail, Scorpio, I want that emotional connection and the intimacy a lot with that act. Taurus could just want to,
Well, it's like
get its
everyone,
rocks off, so to speak.
yeah, Taurus wants to enjoy, right?
Enjoy.
And
Yeah.
Scorpio is going to be
Luxuriate.
concerned with the like psychological maneuvering,
Right.
maybe power,
Right.
and it's so much more complicated where Taurus it's the
Simple, basic.
pleasure. Yeah.
Right. It's
just
not a stupid, I don't want to make it story. It's not about stupidity or slowness. It's a slow sign, but it wants to take its time, and it's very pure and very simple and very basic. The farming, just having a home, basic needs, and loyal. I'm telling you, I'm the most loyal person. If you're right, I show up. Taurus people with Taurus placements show up, loyal. You tell me to be there, I'll physically be there.
all right.
Very, very much that way.
So I don't know if you're dating right now, but if anyone is out there listening, Joe will be there. He's loyal. You can count on him. I have Venus and Taurus, and
Oh, what a beautiful placement.
it's conjunct my midheaven, so I can relate to a lot of the things that you're saying. And yeah, there's this indulgence and this need for luxury and rest and to feel things like all the way through, but still very simply. Which is why the past, what is it, like almost 18 months where the North Node has been in Taurus. It's
Mhm.
gonna leave fairly soon. Um, I was wondering if you had anything to say about like the characterizations of
Yeah.
that North Node in Taurus.
I think the North Node in Taurus for everybody was urging everyone to connect with a talent or a gift that they may not have been aware that they had, that they could bring more value into their life. The value could come in terms of money, but psychologically, the value on a deeper level would be about providing you with a better feeling of self-worth and self-esteem, connecting with people who would give you more validation on your self-worth and self-esteem. The North Node is developing those things that make us feel good about ourselves, but it may be hard because they're new. People, things, beliefs that add worth and depth to your life. Meeting people that bring more substance into your life. We were in a pandemic. The North Node in Taurus says you have to find out new ways to make money. You have to stretch yourself. You can't stay stuck in that South Node. And, you can't, it's like the control issue between Scorpio and Taurus. Taurus says develop something new with your talent and give up and throw away something old, because we had a pandemic that killed off people, but also killed off a lot of people's way of earning a living and finding their self-worth. The North Node asked us all to rebuild those things that provide us with material security. So it was important. And Uranus traveling through Taurus also had to recreate financial bases and ways of doing things, and just connecting with things on a more Uranian level, like a little spacey, That's my take on the North Node in Taurus. What do you think?
Well, the thing with the North Node in Taurus, if the North Node increases appetites, and Taurus already has such a healthy appetite for everything, for all the things, material and pleasurable and physical. I think the past almost 18 months of having the North Node there with our eclipses there were really pushing us and with Uranus there, like you said, recreate some of the basics. Like we had to go back to the basics to figure out how to elaborate on them later. Like that's,
Right.
when during the pandemic, which was a lot of the North Node in Taurus, people started gardening again. They started
Yep.
everyone started baking bread. These are like basic, just going back to the basics, the food.
And reinventing the basics, so gluten-free. Uranus would want something, sugar-free, gluten-free, things that are healthier, recreating the basics so they become healthy, because a lot of the basics we thought were healthy were not healthy.
Right. And also with Uranus and the North Node there, it gives that kind of that lazier type of characterization of Leo a little kick in the butt, because all of a sudden you have this intensification with the North Node, and then Uranus is there saying, Taurus, one of the popular things is like Taurus doesn't like to change. It wants
Right.
to there to sustain and to hold on. And so any like very Taurus oriented person who maybe in the back of their mind was like, oh, this is getting kind of old, or I want to make a change, but I don't want to give up my position. I'm
Right.
very attached to this position of security. Well, Uranus and the North Node are going to come around and say, you know what?
Yeah,
I'm gonna shake that up for you so you can have some movement and get out of this
exactly.
stagnation.
And that can be hard for Taurus energy, very hard, because it's such a fix. I don't want to get out of my rut, but you're not going to grow. That's the bad side of Taurus. You're not going to grow if you stay in a rut too long, if you stay at the fair too long, if you stay doing things past its expiration date. And the Uranus in the North Node says that whatever's past its expiration date has to be shaken up.
Yeah, and so I could see it also being like a painful time and a challenging time for Taurus, but so necessary, because if you can't shake that up and move, you get into one of the, less, desirable Taurus states of
Oh,
stagnation, inertia, stuckness.
stuckness. I mean, just look at those seven deadly sins all belong to the sign of Taurus.
Ah,
I
that's a
mean,
good. I got to remember that. I really like that. So we got to take another break, and when we come
okay.
back, we're going to talk a little bit about Mercury retrograde.
Yay.
Malcolm,
Underwriting at Radio Kingston supports our community fund administered by Family of Woodstock, which helps Kingston community members in immediate need of financial assistance. For more information about supporting the community fund, email underwriting@radiokingston.org.
Hello, I'm a Marine. It took me a long time to make this call.
My buddies from the Army are all gone now. I feel so stuck.
If you or a veteran in your life is experiencing thoughts of suicide, dial 988, then press 1 to reach the Veterans Crisis Line.
Radio Kingston.
Muchas voces, many voices,
one community.
Hi, I'm Carmel Holt. Join me for Sheroes Radio, Monday nights from 10 to midnight, here on Radio Kingston.
We didn't understand this need for a space that was all women.
We're amplifying and celebrating women and gender-expansive folks in music across genres and generations.
There's so many other spaces that are like patriarchal. We need our own.
I need to be around my women. It's very different to have space with women on the road. And I love that I have these women with me, and this is who I'm moving through the world with.
We're turning up the volume of women's voices in song and conversation.
I'm not just making records. I want, if the world ended, somebody to find these records and have a very good understanding of what was happening at that time.
That's Sheroes Radio, Monday nights from 10 to midnight, here at Radio Kingston, AM 1490, FM 1079, and anytime at radiokingston.org.
You're listening to the Cosmic Dispatch. I'm your host, Cory Nakasue, and with me today is astrologer Joseph Addeo. And we just had a nice long chat about Taurus. And we have another major event in Taurus happening on the 21st. That's like the day after all the stuff that happens on the 20th. But, it might as well, Mercury's going to be going retrograde. But on the 20th, it's still not moving. So we'll just lump those 2 days together and actually the whole week into this like very... It's an acute time. So something could actually, intense could happen, or you could feel intensely. It's not like a long, chronic, slow burn type of a week. There's an acuteness to it. So we had to talk about Taurus. And we have another major event happening on the 21st. Mercury is stationing retrograde in the sign. And Joe, do you have any thoughts about this upcoming retrograde?
Oh my God, yes. Yes, we do. If the eclipse brings something to light that you have to deal with right away, the Mercury retrograde immediately, because Mercury is the planet of communication and thinking, and you have to rethink something, review something, reflect on something, be reminded of something. You're going to have to take action, but action to fix something. But in a in a more broad sense for everybody, if you want to access this Mercury retrograde positively, I mean, Mercury in Taurus is slow down your thinking. The eclipse might be speeding everything up and you might be feeling hyper, but slow down your thinking. Think before you speak. Absorb the information in Taurus, digest it before you express or give your reply or an answer to something. Mercury in Taurus chooses words that carry more weight and value and have a bigger bang for their buck. Fewer words that have more substance. A diatribe is not needed in this placement. And you're going to have to really slow that down. You're going to want to maybe, the retrograde says, let me get reconnected with nature. Let me walk more slowly. Let me take walks around nature into my local neighborhood and get familiar with my local neighborhood again. Go up in the mountains, the forest, the trees, walk through Mother Nature. Let your thoughts be inspired by the physical world and have those thoughts feel like an electrical tingle through your body that stimulates the root chakra. So that Mercury acts as a transmitter. And you want to think about how you feel in the body so that the instinct mingles with logic. You need to leave places for rumination with this placement. The ability to listen deeply with Mercury and Taurus. Rethink about things that bring beauty and peace into your life. Taurus is very noteworthy for its peacefulness. It's wanting beauty, the beauty of words, of language, of grammar. How does the sound of your voice make people feel? It's a good time to rethink on a Mercury retrograde old habit patterns that need to be revised. Rethink old habit patterns, reflect on them, change them. Rethink a dietary and weight concerns. Taurus is very much concerned with that stuff. You might want to rethink your diet, revitalize your physical regimen, rethink your financial plan for the future. And then when Jupiter goes into Taurus, make those new investments. So you want to use Mercury and Jupiter together here. Mercury wants to collect all the ABCs. I want to I had a client the other day, he's a Scorpio, and he was asking me about investments. He goes, what can I do for big long-term investments and short-term investments? I said, well, the long-term investments are going to be when Jupiter goes into Taurus opposite your Scorpio sun. But the Mercury, he says, what can I do in a very short-term investment here? I said, do something before Mercury goes retrograde into Taurus, because he wants to sell it quickly. I go, buy something in the next few days, let it play out on the Mercury retrograde, and then when the Mercury turns direct in Taurus, get the money out of it because he wants something short-term. That would be how to use that energy. It would, on a very practical level. But Mercury in Taurus is going to be very, very powerful because Jupiter, Mercury is about the ABCs of something, and you have to rethink everything. And Jupiter is about synthesizing all that information, right? That's why Mercury rules the signs of Virgo and Gemini, because it's very concerned with the facts and the details and the small things and the ABCs and the information. And Jupiter rules Pisces and Sagittarius because it sees the bigger picture. It wants meaning. It wants understanding. It wants truth. Well, Taurus if Mercury's going to be retrograde from 5 degrees to 15 degrees Taurus, Jupiter goes over those same degrees when it goes into Taurus. So it's like what's happening now. You have Pluto turning retrograde on May 1st. You have the eclipse on May 20th. You have Mercury going retrograde. What's happening now is going to be playing out all year because the Mercury retrograde is going to play a huge part in this because Jupiter goes over the same degrees, reminding you that you have to synthesize some new information. It's very interesting setup. Very interesting setup.
Just from what you described, I kind of got this image of like Mercury going back and forth over like these rows and just planting seeds and checking on them. And it's like paving the way for when Jupiter comes into Taurus in May.
Exactly.
And then,
Perfect.
whoa, we're going to get like some miracle grow or something with these little things that we did during the Mercury retrograde in Taurus.
Exactly.
Sound. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm interested in this whole all of this stuff happening in Taurus, and this might be a little far ahead, but hey, this is what astrology is for, kind of. When Jupiter moves into Taurus in May, which is, if we're trying to prepare for it, this Mercury retrograde time would be a great time. In June, Venus moves into Leo, and this summer, Venus is going to have a retrograde in Leo, and it's going to square that Jupiter in Taurus 3 times. Now, you want to talk about like a
That's
hot
fascinating. I haven't even thought
sensual,
about that, but a lot comes to my mind when you just say that.
right?
That's living on credit. Jupiter square Venus. Too much. I waste too much money. Too much party. Venus square Jupiter on it's not a bad aspect generally speaking, but on its negative side, it's overindulgence and living on your credit card and not being able to pay your bills.
Yeah,
It's partying too much, but it's also abundance of some kind. It's the Venus is going to be retrograde, so that's going to be a lot about romances from the past, or how do you fix romance in your life that's there now? How do you get romance back into relationships that are old and worn out? Venus does rule Taurus, so and Jupiter is going to, are we going to travel more? Are you going to maybe Jupiter would be travel? I need to gain on a psychological level. It would be Jupiter's principle is to gain understanding and meaning in life. That's why it rules religion and philosophy and foreign travel and adventure, because all those things give meaning, explain, and broad. And Jupiter square Venus says, I need to get a more deeper understanding about my relationships, because Venus is retrograde. So she wants to be a little more psychological. She wants to dig up things. And Jupiter will say, well, let's improve this relationship and find meaning in what stimulates it. If you're single, Jupiter square that might be a lot of dating. A lot of spending money dating. Use the social apps. Leo's a fun sign. Leo's an entertainment sign. Venus in Leo wants to look good. Jupiter, I maybe going to spend money on, how I look. It has so many permutations. You just have to see how it works in each individual client's chart. What houses it at? What houses are being transited? What houses the planets rule? I mean, that's you know that very well. You're a working astrologer. You know how to you have to everything's a little specific. That's how you get the specifics when you talk to your clients.
But in general, just like that, so Venus squared Jupiter, but then you add Leo and Taurus. I can just see this overextension of desire, too much play, too much indulgence. Writing checks your body can't cash. Hot girl
Biting off more than
summer,
you can chew.
hot boy summer.
Right.
It's
Watch your, I don't, I want to be very careful how I speak here. Venus square Jupiter, it could be, and there's no judgment, please. I'm a gay man. Sleeping around a lot. So watch the capabilities of STIs and STDs. I don't want to scare people, but that's a very indulgent thing, and you have to be careful if you're a little more I don't think there's anything wrong with this behavior. This is not a judgment. But if you're going to be a little indiscriminate with who you're dating, then you might have to pay some prices for the overindulgence. But for people in the entertainment world, or people who are very creative or very artistic, and you don't have to be in the entertainment world to be creative and artistic, the square between Leo and Taurus, I was always told this, and it's so true. Taurus is my potential, and Leo is the expression of my talent. They're very creative signs because the Leo energy pushes that. The Taurus is the talent, and Leo is the expression of it. So you have two planets, the two benefics, in Hellenistic astrology and even in modern astrology. These are the benefic planets. They're going to be talking to each other all summer. So to improve your creativity and to get it out there and to show off, even if it's a hobby, people who are creative may be doing it professionally, but even if you're just, somebody who wants a hobby, it's going to be a beautiful way to show off your talent, what you want. Venus is all of that. It can be very beautiful too.
And a lot of that starts, whatever, transpires in the summer with those squares, starts now with these little seedlings and thoughts
Right.
and ideas and
Right.
communications over the retrograde.
Jupiter is optimism, opportunity, openness, openings, opera, optimism, optimization, opus. Jupiter's job is to expand. So in Taurus, it's going to expand everything around what brings you value in life. Its main purpose is to broaden and synthesize. So in Taurus, it is an expansion of pleasure, an expansion of the physicality and the indulgences of the earth, expansion of luxury, an expansion of your finances. How can I improve my finances? Let's face it, Taurus is very conservative money. How do I improve and Jupiter wants to improve, seeing God, Jupiter's God, right? Or whatever your thought about the creator is, whatever that is. It's seeing the divinity in Mother Nature, seeing the God in Mother Nature, the divine on earth, expanding your value systems, what brings value into your life. I'm looking forward to Jupiter and Taurus because I am a Taurus, so it'll be nice. It'll synthesize a lot of stuff that maybe Uranus shook up. If Uranus forced you to make huge changes in your work and your career and your ability to earn money, Jupiter now will come along and synthesize all that and show you the meaning behind it all and how to apply it to Earth, to your earthly existence. Jupiter is spending more money on travel, right? There's so many combinations here. I'm talking too much.
No, no, go ahead. You're my guest. People hear from me all the time. But I'm also thinking, I'm hoping that having Jupiter and Taurus might bring us a year of some kind of improved conditions around climate change. Crossed fingers, hopefully. Maybe
that's a beautiful thing,
really
right? Taurus is very much because an understand, new meaning. Yes, that would be a beautiful thing. It'll be interesting. It won't happen this year, but when Jupiter does conjunct Uranus, but that won't happen until 2024. But and obviously, personally for everybody, Jupiter's a 12-year cycle. So if you're old enough to remember, most of us are, unless you're only 12 years old. Look 12 years ago to when Jupiter transited Taurus in your chart. Obviously, there are going to be other transits around that may mitigate it or modify it in some way. But Jupiter's a 12-year cycle.
Yeah, that's good advice. If you're just starting out with astrology and you see these outer planets, or even the faster moving ones, like you can look back.
I know what I want to say about Jupiter. Jupiter gives you the confidence to do things that are difficult. So a lot of times people will say, Jupiter's traveling my chart, but things are so rough. And I go, well, Jupiter will say, I could deal with it. I have the confidence. I have the gods on my side. When more challenging things are happening and Jupiter's very prominent in the chart, well, it gives you the ability to take the risks and then go out and do it and feel like you can handle it rather than buckle under the pressure.
Right.
That's a lovely part of Jupiter.
Confidence and protection.
Protection, yes.
Yeah. So it would be a great time to take a little risk, because wherever Jupiter is in your chart, you're protected in that realm with a little
a little gamble, a little risk. I agree. Yeah. We have so many other planets that are so so it's interesting because Saturn in Pisces says, to tie it into Jupiter and Taurus, Saturn in Pisces is making people think about what are their dreams and how can they manifest their dreams and what's the hard work they have to put into it, or are they going to be disappointed? And then Jupiter goes into Taurus and said, well, old crony Saturn is saying, if you want to achieve your dreams, you better practice and put some work into it, not just sit there and dream about it. And then Jupiter and Taurus says, and put some money behind it, and you have the Taurus Pisces connection there would be has a kind of Taurus Pisces connections are very lovely in terms of fertility. Yeah. Perfect. That's great word, fertility.
Well, Joe, our conversation was so fertile, and we're already at the end of it.
I
And
could
so
talk
I
forever with you.
want to thank you so much for joining me today. It was a pleasure. All of
Torian
Joe's
pleasure.
Torian pleasure. All of Joe's information is going to be available in the show notes and in the archive. And you can book a reading with him. And I hope you start teaching again soon, because
I
you.
will. I will.
you're a
I'm going to
good
get my syllabuses back under control here.
All right. Well, I'll see you again, same place, same time next week. And so this is Cory Nakasue signing off. Stay tuned for Radio Cake.
Are we off? Thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you. Okay.